there they go again. The Republicans in Georgia trying to block future voters. Their voter purges are legendary. That's why Brian Kemp's governor right now. He purged voters when he was Secretary of State. And because shockingly enough, it turned out to be a lot of minority voters. And then he barely won over Stacey Abrams. If he had not done that in what appears to be definitely a legitimate and likely illegal way, right now he would not be the governor. So Republicans are used to cheating. Now they usually, as we told you during the election mess, they cheat before the elections, and Trump was trying to cheat after the elections, which is more brazen and harder to pull off. Whereas the Georgia Republicans are like, hey, you knucklehead, just work with us. Look at all this cheating we normally do before the elections. So they did that again. They were supposed to introduce a 2-page bill that was supposed to address voting rights, i.e. take away voting rights. Gee, I wonder if that's ever happened in the South with black voters before. Anyways, instead they go, hey, that bill was not toxic enough. Here's a 93-page bill an hour before the vote, and he takes away a lot more stuff. So let me go to Common Dreams for a quick explanation. Democratic lawmakers, they explain, as civil rights groups are accusing Georgia state Republicans of launching an ambush attack on the franchise after GOP lawmakers transformed a 2-page bill limiting who's permitted to send absentee ballot applications into a sprawling 93-page omnibus package that would significantly alter election laws and curtail voting rights. As Janine Elson, the director counsel of the NAACP, explained, the new omnibus bill, quote, combines nearly every tactic to disenfranchise black voters that we've seen to date. She continued to say, this is a hijacking of democracy in plain sight. And then you go to Georgia Public Broadcasting that did research on this, and they found out that a recent analysis by GPB News, that's them, and the Center for Public Integrity, found many proposed voting changes would disproportionately impact non-white voters. What a shock. And prevent local officials from taking steps to cut down on the lines. Now, Democrats have decided to fight back. And they're fighting on 2 fronts. One, on this particular issue in Georgia, but 2, they're introducing federal regulations that would permit more voting. So Senator Warnock, who of course is from Georgia and just won that Senate race in Georgia, is now, and he was Reverend Warnock, he's still Reverend Warnock, but he's now also Senator Warnock, decided to give a speech on this, which is very understandable, especially on increased voting rights. And I thought it was particularly poignant, so let's watch.
I stand before you saying that this issue, access to voting and preempting politicians' efforts to restrict voting, is so fundamental to our democracy that it is too important to be held hostage by a Senate rule, especially one historically used to restrict expansion of voting rights. It is a contradiction to say we must protect minority rights in the Senate while refusing to protect minority rights in the society. Colleagues, no Senate rule should overrule the integrity of our democracy. And we must find a way to pass voting rights whether we get rid of the filibuster or not.
All right, 2 parts that I loved. First, he said, wait, now we're protecting minority rights in the Senate because of this filibuster procedural business, but we're not actually protecting minority rights in the country, the voters. So help me understand how that makes sense. And the reality is, and that's why the speech is important and powerful, is because they actually, that's the whole point of the filibuster. It's so ironic to take away rights from minorities. So let me give you this stunning fact. I got more on this and a giant twist in the story. The twist is it explains to you how politics works in a nutshell. So don't go anywhere, you need to hear the twist. Okay, but before that, guys, stunning fact is between 1877 and 1964, every single time that the filibuster was used, it was to block civil rights for African Americans. So the filibuster is not coincidentally racist, it is meant to be racist. It was not in the Constitution, the founding fathers were against it. They inserted it as a Senate rule to protect the ability of the South to terrorize black people through lynchings, et cetera. And when you say, oh, lynchings, that sounds, hey, Cenk, that sounds extreme. No, a lot of times when they filibustered, they literally filibustered anti-lynching laws. The filibuster was used for pro-lynching reasons. It's not an exaggeration. That is a historical fact. So you'll excuse me if I agree with Reverend Warnock that I'm not overly worried about protecting the privileges of racist senators that have used the filibuster against civil rights for its entire history.
You know what else I enjoyed was he did a nice little political maneuver there, where he essentially positioned democracy as bigger than one Senate rule, right? And so he's given his Democratic colleagues who haven't yet come to the idea that we should abolish the filibuster, just period, plain and simple. He gave them cover. He's like, I'm gonna let y'all have y'all cover by positioning this thing that I'm talking about as bigger than these rules, bigger than us. It gets to the core of the nation itself as a self-governing democracy. And you can't be a self-governing democracy if you're denying the franchise to a huge swaths of your citizenry. And so I kind of enjoyed the sort of beautiful ballet that he did up there politically to his sort of weak-minded Democratic Party colleagues.
Let me add something to that. The Senate rule for the filibuster is not constitutional, it's not statutory. It is the equivalence of an office rule. That's it. So you're telling me that an office rule is going to stop the progress of millions of Americans? And what kind of progress are we talking about? One, we're talking about voting. Obviously, voting is fundamental because it retains all of the other rights that we're trying to fight for. Number two, raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. Number three, getting the George Floyd Act passed, and on and on and on. You get none of these things done without eliminating the filibuster. So if you don't start with characterizing it properly as an office rule and nothing more, then you probably don't get to the next step. And now you're talking about losing the House, losing the Senate, and getting absolutely nothing done in the future. And you were elected, Joe Biden was elected with the most votes of anybody ever running for president in the history of this country. That has to mean something. And I'm afraid, my fear is he's such an institutionalist that he's going to let this moment bypass him, which means it bypasses us.
Yeah, those are such excellent points. First of all, I love the way you framed it as an office rule, except it's slightly worse. It's a pro-lynching office rule.
Exactly.
Okay, I don't know why we'd want to keep that rule. I mean, imagine if you had that in an actual office. Do you have any idea how quickly you get pulled into HR? Okay. So, all right, let's keep it real on that. Okay, but you guys are both making a really good point, which is that look, what we're worried about as progressives is that Democrats don't actually want to pass the $15 minimum wage. They don't actually want to, by the way, they don't even want to pass the George Floyd rules. Let's keep it real. Oh my God, we'll lose the cops in the suburbs and all that stuff, right? So they're just trying to pass HR 1, which would expand voting rights because it helps them. Now it's a great thing. It helps all voters, right? But yes, they're mainly concerned about it because of their own purposes. That's why Reverend Warnock has to be like, okay, I know some of you care about this office rule, right? But this thing's really important, remember, right? And even Manchin's like, oh, it's gonna help me win. Maybe I make an exception.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so now Warnock had another more powerful part of this speech, and it's gonna lead to the twist in a second, okay? So here he talks about all the people and the sacrifices they made to get us those voting rights. Let's listen.
Reinhold Niebuhr was right. Humanity's capacity for justice makes democracy possible, but humanity's inclination to injustice makes democracy necessary. John Lewis understood that and was beaten on a bridge defending it. Amelia Boynton, like so many women not mentioned nearly enough, was gassed on that same bridge. A white woman named Viola Luiso was killed. Medgar Evers was murdered in his own driveway. Schwerner, Cheney, and Goodman, two Jews and an African American standing up for that sacred idea of democracy, also paid the ultimate price.
I love that point so much because so all those folks lost their lives so you can get a chance to vote. Now we're gonna let it slip away because of an office rule. No, No, that's not gonna stand, okay? So now here comes an unbelievable twist. The Republicans have withdrawn some of the worst parts of this bill in the state of Georgia. Nobody saw that. They're probably deeply moved by Senator Warnock's speech. They probably saw all the activists and they were like, oh my God, you guys are right. It was only black people who were targeted. Holy cow, okay? So man, we didn't see that. Thanks for pointing it out. So let's find out why. So we're going to go to the Hill. Reed Wilson reports, top Republicans in Georgia state legislature are backing away from a controversial plan to eliminate no excuse absentee voting and to do away with early voting on Sundays after increasing criticism from voting rights groups and hold. Okay, now so far I'm reading this and I'm thinking, these folks never cared about Medgar Evers. They did not. They didn't look at that Warnock speech and grow a conscience. And voting rights groups in Georgia, the Republicans are going to care about voting rights groups in Georgia. I'm like, I cannot wait to see how this sentence ends. Although, if you watch the Young Turks, you know how it's going to end. Here we go. And the state's largest businesses. Say it with me. Of course. So this is how our so-called democracy works. I'll add one last line from the bottom of the article. Atlanta-based Coca-Cola and Home Depot publicly opposed the new restrictions proposed in the Republican-sponsored bills. And voila, all of a sudden they're gone. So Dr. Richey, you're from there. Is Coca-Cola and Home Depot the most powerful things in the state of Georgia?
Well, they are to the Republicans. Now, let me show you how diabolical this is, and taking no credit away from my brothers and sisters who are advocates and activists in this state. I was at the Georgia General Assembly today. One of the lawmakers, he's chair of the Democratic caucus named Billy Mitchell. He said, Rashad, we're gonna go back so far back in the state, people are gonna start having to count jelly beans to vote again, right? Here's how extreme the strategy is. And I want everyone to follow me on this and understand how strategic these individuals are. They packed the bill so that there could be a semblance of a victory on the other side. Taking away souls to the polls, we're talking about weekend voting, was something that the governor, the Republican governor, already said he didn't want in there anyway, but they put it in there. Now that's gone. So what you have here is this overpacking of the bill, the most extreme version of the bill, and then they take away some elements, and then these Fortune 500 companies get to do a victory lap with other Republicans, as well as giving some credibility to the activists, and folks that are really apolitical get to say, oh, this must be a kumbaya moment. Let's be real. This bill still makes it illegal to give mama them water if they're waiting in line. It makes it a misdemeanor crime if you give someone a drink of water while they're waiting in one of these lines that they have made long themselves. Also, the bill still makes it illegal for you to send a voter in the state of Georgia a piece of mail that says, hey, would you like an absentee ballot to vote? Something that was done universally in this state and led by people like Stacey Abrams. So a lot of what the bill still does takes away conveniences. And here's the kicker, man. The bill still says that if you want to vote by way of absentee, you must either present a copy of your ID or a copy of your driver's license number or state ID number inside of the package of your ballot to absentee vote. And it still takes away the county's ability to have voter ballot boxes, a certain number of ballot boxes in their own counties. Counties can't make the decisions on their own. And if they try to do it, that is also against the law. So those things are still in the bill and still extremely detrimental to the conveniences that we need in our democracy.
Yeah, look, while we're having a Coke and a smile about corporate America, while we're having a Coke and a smile about how corporate America is helping us get to the right goal here a little bit. And by the way, part of the reason I think that the Tucker Carlsons and the Fox News of the world are starting to turn against corporate America. Like they're seeing corporations go, yeah, no, I think gay rights is okay. We want gay people to buy our products. Like, this bill is terrible. Let's take out the two worst parts of it, but keep the rest of the trash in there because we still like to sell Coke to black folks. Right?
Preach that, brother.
Right? And so that, and until Trump and the populists took over, the Republican Party was run 100% by the Chamber of Commerce. And now they've got to do a balancing act between the Chamber of Commerce and the racists. Like the racists were always there, but they just took them for granted. They weren't empowered. The Trump wing empowered them. So now they're saying that version of the Republican Party is saying, we don't give a damn about Coke or Home Depot. We do not want black people to vote, okay? I don't care what Coke says. And that's why there's a little bit of a civil war within the Republican Party, but there's still terrible things in this bill. Was.
You know, I have so many thoughts about this. Obviously, you know, morally, this is repugnant. It's just the worst thing you could possibly do as a lawmaker is disenfranchise your constituents just on purpose. Like, it reminds me of, as a New Yorker, of the pants sagging law. It's like these people aren't criminals, so we just criminalize their behavior and just sort of work backwards that day. So it's like, oh, these black people doing souls to the polls. Let's take that out. Let's do this. Let's make that somehow, nefarious and some type of tactic or maneuver for mass voter fraud. But and I would like to ask Rashad about this. They got smoked in places like Cobb County and some of the white suburbs in Georgia, places that it was unheard of that a Democrat could do well in. And their answer is to disenfranchise black aunties and grannies. I don't understand that. Is that a good strategy, Rashad?
Well, it's a massive manipulation strategy. And the reason why there's massive manipulation is because they cannot come up with a massive message to actually get people to vote for them. So let's be very clear about what's happening right now. You have, as I said earlier, politicians picking the voters and the voters not picking the politicians. That's what they hope to accomplish in these new statutory laws. Here's something that went underreported in the state of Georgia. Not only did Georgia deliver for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and they delivered for Ossoff and Warnock, Georgia also delivered places like Cobb County, as you said. Cobb is spelled C-O-B-B. When I was a teenager, Cobb stood for count on being busted and caught out being black. That's how extreme it was in Cobb County. Now Cobb County is flipping, Gwinnett County is flipping. You have record turnout in places like Fulton County, DeKalb County, Clayton County. That's because of the conveniences of early voting, absentee voting, weekend voting, souls to the polls. Remember, 16 years ago, Republicans in the state of Georgia, they're the ones that passed absentee voting. They're the ones that said, okay, no excuses anymore to absentee vote. Why? Because they launched a campaign for their elderly white constituents to vote from the ease of their homes. That's why they said it was all good. Until black folks learned how to do it, progressives learned how to do it, young folks learned how to do it, members of the LGBTQ community stood up and did it in record numbers. Now all of a sudden there's a voter integrity issue. And here's the icing on the cake. The people leading this charge said there was no voter fraud. The governor of Georgia said no voter fraud took place. The Secretary of State, Raffensperger, the chief elections officer, said no voter fraud took place. However, they're making laws to address massive voter fraud in the state of Georgia. They are literally legislating on lies in order to appease a demographic based on rumor, conjecture, and insane conspiracy theories. No way to run a government. That's no way to even run your own household. And that's how our leaders have decided to take leadership during this time in our democracy.
Right, and remember everybody, during the Jim Crow era, they also had plenty of excuses for not letting black people vote. It's not like they just said, no, we're just not going to. They said, oh my God, they gotta pay this and they have to do that. Right. They always had excuses. This is just a new Jim Crow with new excuses.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.